aspect of penetration testing and vulnerability management. My name is Ana Maria Bușoniu, and I am the head of NCC Romania. It's a real pleasure to see you, so many experts, partners, colleagues, to discuss one of the most dynamic and essential areas of cybersecurity. In today's fast changing digital landscape, penetration testing and vulnerability management are not just technical exercise. It's clear that we discuss about strategic capabilities. They show how ready we are to anticipate, detect, and respond before incident occur. This workshop is part of our joint effort to strengthen the Europe cybersecurity ecosystem, combining technical excellence, research, and policy cooperation under the CYSSDE project. Now, let me briefly walk you through today's agenda. First, we will start with an introduction to the CYSSDE project presented by Ulrich Sargsek from ALSEC, who will give us an overview of the project's vision and impact. After that, our colleague Răzvan Crăciunescu will share recent technical studies on the impact of penetration testing and vulnerability management, highlighting both operational lessons and strategic takeaways. After that, we'll move to a session on European level, examples, case studies, and good practices. Our colleague Rob von Roy from Toreon will present, and in the end we will discuss about the challenges at the national level with our colleagues from the National Directorate for Cybersecurity in Romania, Gabriel Niculescu. Thank you for being with us. Also, in the end, we will conclude with a Q&A session where we invite you everyone to share questions, ideas, and experience. So once again, thank you for being here, for contributing your expertise, and for helping us turn today's discussion into a meaningful progress for our cybersecurity community. So let's begin. Ulrich, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna, again, and happy to be here, and thanks again also for the invitation. It was good to see you all in Bucharest 2 weeks ago, and now we're back online, so but equally good to see you. So thanks for the opportunity. A quick recap for those of you who might not have seen it in Bucharest. So CYSSDE is a European collaboration. A number of partners, technical and supporting partners such as tehnice in Romania, are basically organizing this activity in the first place to support companies in doing pen tests, doing vulnerability assessments for other large organizations, critical infrastructure and essential services under NIS2, but equally so for SMEs. So we actually have a program that is supporting and financing pen tests. That's actually the core of what CYSSDE is all about. But it's not only this. And to basically give a bit of a background on why we do this and how this came about. So CYSSDE is, as a program, supported by the European Digital Europe program. There specifically to address a number of the cybersecurity challenges which are there, and also to support the European policymaking and legislation that is being deployed in the different member states, such as NIS2, CRA, but also other similar types of acronyms that we'll be talking about in just a second. We're also here to increase basically the capabilities and identify the capacity, and also increase the capacity throughout Europe by, for instance, ensuring that there is an increase in skills. I'll talk a bit about that as well, and you'll be able to learn some of the materials that we are providing. And you're, of course, able to also develop your own skills and competences in this domain. And we very much support that. So giving a little bit of perspective why this is the case. This is Dutch, for those of you who might not see it. It's basically a Flemish response on a website of the Belgian Senate. It's now a couple of, I think it was from a year and a half ago, where basically the website of the Belgian Senate was not available anymore due to a series of vulnerabilities which were exploited by some external cyber criminals, we can call them. It can be identified as a hack of, in this case, the Senate. Those cyber incidents, as you might know, are happening on a day-to-day basis, but they have an origin. So why are there different cyber incidents? It's because there are different vulnerabilities that can be exploited. What is it that we try to do with pen tests? In the core, it's basically to identify where there are vulnerabilities with the objective to identify what risks that we have in order to for us to be able to mitigate them and to avoid those incidents from happening. So that, I think in short, is basically what we'll be talking about for the rest of the morning. What I'm going to do here is put things a little bit in perspective and then hand it over to the colleagues who will be further detailing on the pen testing activities. So overall, I think we can see that there's quite a lot of cyber threats coming towards us. They have different origins, they have different impacts, they have also different magnitudes. But in essence, what it comes down to is that a connected business that we're all working these days, we have cameras, we have different air conditioning systems, we have lighting systems, all of them are these days connected to the internet. I challenge you sometimes to find an appliance or a device these days that is not connected to the internet anymore. I had difficulties last year in buying myself a new fridge, which was not connected because I didn't want it to be connected. But unfortunately, it was not the case. So I was forced basically to buy a connected device. Which means also that basically at this point in time in my own house, I need to start monitoring how my attack surface is expanding. Because of course, I'm not just connecting this fridge to my Wi-Fi networks, let alone be that I really need to do that for whatever purpose needed. However, now these days, after about a year, the fridge is asking me to change the filter. And if I really want to do that properly, I need to connect to the fridge and try to understand what it really is about. So that is where suddenly my attack vector will increase. And again, I don't really want to do that, but I'm forced to do so. And I think that's also the case in many environments that we are faced with today. Maybe it's not that we want it to be, but it's basically because we are forced to. Just think about your own situation in your own organization. You might try to lock everything down, and then there are some of the colleagues that will be able to find additional, what we then call shadow IT, so using services and applications in the cloud that allow them to operate the way they need to. But of course, you are losing control of the data that is being sent around. This is a statistic from just less than a year ago. It's basically the number of vulnerabilities which are being discovered. And this is just the top of the iceberg, to be honest. I mean, it's on an annual basis, as you can see, the number of CVEs in this case. I'll talk to Rob a little bit later on what CVEs are all about. So these are basically officially reported vulnerabilities. Now, in reality, the number of vulnerabilities discovered is a lot higher. Not all of them are being basically reported as CVEs. And reality, of course, on a day-to-day basis, the number of vulnerabilities is sky high in the sense that these are already known vulnerabilities because they have been reported. But there's also quite a number of vulnerabilities being discovered on a continuous basis, both known and unknown. So on those statistics, it's sometimes a little bit more difficult to find. So what is sometimes the reason for things to happen? The example a couple of years ago, December 20, just less than 5 years ago, there was this company called SolarWinds, which basically got quite a lot of attention because they had a system, they have a system which is supporting a number of US-based government institutions and also commercial institutions with what is called a product called Orion. That Orion product had a number of vulnerabilities which were exploited, and therefore suddenly a couple of thousand companies had their systems being vulnerable as well, because of the fact that this was a very crucial system that's managing basically as a network management system quite a lot of assets within an organization. So the impact was quite significant, and for that reason, as a result, a lot of other things started to happen. Another example of vulnerabilities appearing, some of you might remember this nice cuddly toy. Now, when this cuddly toy suddenly starts speaking Russian, which might not be that unfamiliar in Romania, but it was in many other countries, and especially when then there's also lots of not very pleasant messages coming out of the cloud pet in this case, there were a couple of other challenges to be made. So vulnerabilities were found in the cloud pet and were also exploited by a number of Russian hackers. And so you can go on and on and on. This is an example of an basically a lock which you can open up via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but that can of course also be hacked. And then this cuddly telephone from the past. So a couple of different instruments, even in the sex industry. So there's quite a number of known vulnerabilities, both in terms of hardware as well as in terms of software, in terms of different systems that need to be monitored on a continuous basis. And depending on what you have inside of your organization, whether they are Cisco routers or Fortinet firewalls, or whether they're Apache web service or something else, all of those different appliances or software, as you can see, have known vulnerabilities. Some of those a little bit more than others, but definitely all of them do have. From vulnerabilities to CVEs, which means that if people, in this case, ethical hackers or companies specialized in the domain, are discovering new vulnerabilities, they have the potential to first warn the manufacturer or the operator, in this case, of the vulnerabilities, make sure that they can respond to it in a timely fashion, and then in coordination, they will be able to notify, in this case, CVE authorities that a new known vulnerability is known. It will get a certain description and scoring, and therefore it can also be exchanged to the rest of the world so that everybody knows about this vulnerability and they can be handled. Now, there is of course a time lapse because when a vulnerability is being discovered, there is some time that needs to go over for it to being reported. So it is of essence and of importance that you do regular pen tests as well to discover potential vulnerabilities in your systems, which might, number one, not be known, or number two, which might be known but not yet reported. So there are many different reasons why vulnerabilities testing is definitely useful. And then in this case, a short overview of the relevance of vulnerabilities to exploits and the time it takes in some cases of a CVE disclosure to a known exploitation, where you can see that this has been increasing quite steeply over the last couple of years. And so new exploits can be tend to be, let's say, exploited quite fast. Because also on the side of the cyber criminals, they organize different databases to collect information about websites or to collect information about vulnerable systems. So when a new exploit appears or a vulnerability appears, that they can start exploiting them immediately. Just to give the indication that this is not only linked to software, as I already showed in the appliances, it's also very much linked to, in this case, hardware. So we have a number of partners of ours which are doing specific vulnerability assessments and pen testing on, for instance, in this case, it's an example of a mobile and portable vacuum cleaner. So the thing that you have running around maybe in your house to do vacuum cleaning. And there are quite a number of vulnerabilities to be discovered. For instance, why does this thing have to have a USB port? So just to give that a little bit into perspective, it becomes very tough for you as an operator, as a company, as even a systems security operator to monitor what's really going on and where all of your different cybersecurity challenges are. So cybersecurity in 2025 looks a bit like a console of an aircraft where you have many different screens that you have to continuously monitor and many different lights that can go off on a continuous basis. So putting things into perspective and also linking it to some of the things that we'll be talking about later on. We link this back into both NIS2 and CRA, and I think Gabriel will be talking about that as well on a national context. So both of the legislations have a series of activities which are being expected from, in this case, different operators or manufacturers to do. And one of those is about risk analysis and information system security policies, but definitely also about the risk assessment. So if you go to the CRA, similar thing can apply. So different obligations that are needed. And for instance, it says here, no known exploitable vulnerabilities, which therefore assumes that you know which vulnerabilities that your product has, and therefore that you should do something about it. So therefore, this is the legal context where actually pen tests or vulnerability assessments are also required. That brings me then up to the point whereby I'm actually now able to talk a little bit about CYSSDE in itself. So with CYSSDE, we support that companies, manufacturers undertake these types of pen tests and vulnerability assessments, and we offer up to €200,000 to be able to do that. Now, this is not the case right now, as in today, but if you prepare yourself for the next couple of months, organize yourself in a consortium, we will have another round in Open Call 3 being published in January. So this is really timely for you to be informed about this, and so that you can follow up on what CYSSDE is doing in order to apply for the €200,000 in funding. So we have a financial support action that is related to this, where we do that. On the CYSSDE website, you will also be able to find some additional documentation, for instance, about the relevance, importance, and even necessity of penetration testing, which was partly written by our colleague here from the NSC that will be talking later on. And you will also be able to find on our website some background information on how easy it is to hack the world. So a webinar that Robba, who will also be talking a little bit later on, will be sharing with you. So what we also offer for you is a capability of learning how to pen test. It's not that we advise to do that, but at least we give you a bit of background on how you organize your internal organization, how pen tests actually work, and how you need to prepare yourself for those different things to run. So there's a whole list of different pen test scenarios that we have prepared that you can basically download. There's some documents that you can download, like this one is a 0-day attack and vulnerability exploitation test. So you can download that, you can read the instructions, and basically deploy this internally within your organization. And basically also through this, start learning about, you can download this book from the CYSSDE website. Basically, you just simply browse through cyssde.eu, and from there on, you will go through the pen testing scenarios where you can easily find the list, and from there, you'll go to the download of the PDFs. But thanks for the question. In any case, I just saw it appearing. So in this, we can also invite you. And so for all of those of you who are participating today, I would recommend very much also to use the CYSSDE scenario assessment. So once you've downloaded them and you tested them, you can help us out actually by seeing if you can, if you need to improve the scenarios. And those of you who are responding to this today, if you take this survey today, so the entries of the CYSSDE scenario survey today will be receiving from us a voucher, an Amazon voucher of €20. So please do that. So download the scenarios, just scroll through them, and then go to the evaluation and test it out for yourself, and let us know how this worked. So very quickly, and then I'll be happy to hand it over to Razvan. Very quickly, some of the results of our first open call for pen testing and vulnerability assessments. So in the first place, we received many different applications. In total, about 123 applicants, of which quite a number actually also came from Romania, but actually quite well spread throughout Europe. The pen testing interest went into many different types of systems, both networking as well as cloud, as well as web applications. These were actually not singular, but they could also be added up. Doing both automated, manual, and continuous pen tests, and where there was both in profiles of people having had done vulnerability scannings, responsible disclosure, and pen testings. And just to give you a bit of an indication on some of the winners of the contest, and I'll just quickly explain a couple of them. Asfin and ChargeIQ, for instance, are doing pen tests specifically in the domain of electric chargers and systems of electric charging facilities in the next 18 months. Then from Slovenia, we have 3FS, mainly focusing on systems related in hospitals and healthcare environments. So pen testing specifically operational systems there, together with the hospitals themselves. Just browsing through a couple of them, as you can see, so those were the winners of the assessments. Another one maybe that I can talk about is Tarlogic, who will be doing a specific pen test for both financial and energy infrastructures in Spain, and then a couple of others. So these use cases will also be made available on the CYSSDE website, and you will also be able to get a little bit more of a glimpse on what they really are. As a final thing for me then, if you're interested in pen testing and in what Europe has to offer in terms of capacity and capabilities in pen testing, I would like to invite you to sign up to our social network, which is mainly focused on European pen testers, to share expertise and experiences, but also to basically be able to connect to them and maybe yourself to be added to the platform. So go to assessmentexperts.eu. You can also find the link through the CYSSDE website and register yourself. Maybe not yet too many there yet as we speak, but in the next 6 months, we will see that increasing quite significantly. And we aim to get about 200 pen test experts in Europe to be at least connected with each other on this particular domain. So with this, I would say thank you very much for your attention and the interest. Some additional backgrounds on where to reach us. So if you didn't get the URL, this is where it is, and also how to reach us. And thank you again, Anna, Elena, and the NCC Romania team for giving us the opportunity to present here again. So I'll stop sharing here.
Thank you a lot, Uli, for the presentation. And before going to Răzvan, I want only to mention that what's more common, unfortunately, in Romania is being targeted by the Russian cyber attacks than heard speaking Russian. So it's very clear that we need to focus more on this. Răzvan, you have the floor. Thanks for a very good presentation, and I think very useful for the entire community. Răzvan, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, thank you, Ulrich, for the presentation. If you need a refrigerator, we can ship one from Romania without being connected to the internet. Just let us know. Okay. Here. I hope you can all see my screen now. Perfect. So I will close my camera for a bit. I'm not in a place with a lot of bandwidth. So yes, good day, and thank you all for being here. My name is Răzvan, and in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to explain how penetration testing and vulnerability management work together to reduce risk across projects, services, products, and in the end, for companies. Moment. Okay. So, well, the question is, as we need also to have a question to answer, what is penetration testing or pen testing, and why we are going to do that. So our target today is to do an alignment or to have a shared understanding of definition or on benefits, maybe on trade-offs, and in the end for you to have a confident decision where to start. We are going to start on what is pen testing, then define vulnerability management, and then we are going to compare them. So we perform penetration testing to move or to get from assumptions to evidence. So from hypothesis to evidence. Pen testing is like a car crash test. We have the car, of course, and we need to crash it in order to see what are the vulnerabilities, and in the end to give it a score. So a pen testing, it's a controlled, authorized simulation of a real attack. Usually, ethical hackers try to do that, what real attackers would do. So we can learn where we are exposed, whether our monitoring and response work under pressure, how an attacker could claim small issues, how an attacker could get into our system. And what is most important is that this is not some theoretical thing that we are doing, but we gain real insights, and these real insights will have business impact, because in the end, if we have more insight and more information, then we are going to know how to protect our business and to have more economical benefits. So a strong pen test, so the idea of a strong pen test is to deliver a clear story, and it shows the entry point, the sequence of weaknesses that are chained together, the data or system that can be reached, and the impact, so that the business leaders can understand what is at stake. It also gives the remediation guidance, and it can highlight which direction to tune or to do the patches based on what the testers actually did. Usually all of this chain of events will transform whatever security understanding a business has from something that is vague, like, yes, usually everything has risks, we also have risks, to a plan to how to fix what risk, so what are exact risks, how to fix them, why it matters, and how are we going to verify what is truly fixed. So there are two ways of doing penetration testing. There is the automated pen test. This provides speed and allows you to explore many paths quickly. And there is the manual pen testing, where you have a human there that can bring in this mix also creativity, experience, and maybe some corner cases that they can test, that they know from experience. So they can also go where automation fails to go into every corner. Usually best, as in other aspects of life, best is blending the two. So you have automation that could give you a broader view on the subject, and then the human or the manual stuff can come for more depth or more niche, and maybe more realistic corner case use cases that the automation is not prepared for. Now we are going to ask ourselves, what is vulnerability management? So continuing the analogy with the car, so if penetration testing is the crash test of the car, vulnerability management should be the seatbelt, and there should be some regular maintenances that you are doing for your car, so that in a possible car crash, you are at least from some point of view, you are safe. So vulnerability management, it's a cycle that discover your assets, scan them for known weaknesses and misconfigurations, then it prioritizes based on risk and business context what you have to do next. It tries to fix through patches, and then verify that the fix that were enabled work. The idea here is simple. It's also something that Ulrich said. You need to shrink the attack surface as often as possible, so that easily to gain into your or to gain access to your system is not easy, but it is not something that accumulates week after week, but you are always on top of the situation. So vulnerability management matters because information is power, but also visibility on what is going on with your system at every moment matters. Usually, or not usually, for sure, you cannot protect what you don't know. So having regular scanning, having them happen on a fixed schedule, also bringing fixes to reduce whatever it's needed in the system, but also to prevent human errors. This could prevent outages, and you are going also to keep an evidence from, let's say, if you need audit ready systems, and usually you have everything in one place, what it was fixed, how it was verified, so you have this traceable management system for security. If we are looking at pen testing and vulnerability management from a big picture, the vulnerability management usually it's automated and looks at known weaknesses and configuration issues across many systems. And pen testing then test everything that vulnerability management, let's say, looked at. It's a realistic attempt to exploit and exploit issues and chain them so that it can demonstrate what could happen and what is the business impact of a security leak. Let's say that let's say the vulnerability management will keep everything, let's say, if you have a floor, it will keep your floor clean, but the pen testing wants to see how the floor actually can break and how that looks like. So you need both. That's the main conclusion. There are some differences, and we have here this slide that you can see that divides vulnerability assessment and penetration testing by features. But we can say that penetration tests prove risk by reaching sensitive data, moving, escalating privileges. So this will give you impact on a business scale, and vulnerability management assessment will identify vulnerabilities in systems and networks and then automate scanning for known vulnerabilities. By comparing them, if we are to choose a starting point, or if you want to have one of them in your company, you have to ask yourself what do you read right now. If you need fast, repeatable coverage to understand your overall security and to track whether you are improving month to month, you should start with vulnerability management and to put it in place. If you need to know what truly breaks, to exercise detection and response, or to validate a sensitive release before it goes live, then you should schedule a pen test. Of course, if you are a company that wants to be or to cover everything, you should combine them both. Having continuous scanning to maintain day-to-day knowledge about your system, but also having targeted pen tested on some things that you consider the crown jewels of your system, and to see what are the failures that really matters and that will have a business impact. So of course, neither approach is perfect. So you have to have some trade-offs. Vulnerability management usually is broad, but is quick and excellent for trends, but it only will find what is known and does not by add several consequences and adapt your logic, but it is time boxed, so you cannot do it every week, or it's not, you can do it, but it's not something that you would like to do. And of course, it's very niche, so it will cover only the assets that you need to do pen testing on. So of course, the conclusion also having this slide with pros and cons is the same. You have to pair them both in order to have an overview of the system, but also to avoid blind spots and to avoid overconfidence in your system. So asking or trying to see what to use when. You should use vulnerability assessment when onboarding a new asset, establishing the monthly baselines, maintaining compliance cadence, and enforcing remediation or service level agreements. And you should use penetration testing before major releases, after significant architecture changes, for internal facing or sensitive systems, and whenever you want to stress test your system and to see what's the response of the system. So you can establish the pace on which you can do one of them or both of them based on what's your business. So what are some impact and recommendation for project planning? As you have already, maybe you are working in sprints or you have some methodology of the projects, you should integrate pen testing and vulnerability assessment into your project lifecycle, either if it's agile or if it's waterfall. And for this, you have to define some acceptance criteria for the test that you are going to use, and of course, update the detection or whatever you see or whatever is given to you by the testing that you are doing. The pen testing impact on projects and services. On projects, pen testing reveals realistic or how can you find that path that will get you into a system, but it's usually used before launch. That will reduce the hot fixes, that will smooth audit, and that will build user trust from day one. On services, pen testing validates resilience against credible attack chains. It can produce concrete run books for operational teams and help tune monitoring and alerting where it counts. If we are going to talk about pen testing impact on products and companies, on products, early exploits will influence design decisions, will improve reliability, and will become a market differentiator because you can show proof of testing rather than just promises. At the company level, pen testing will lower the likelihood and impact of breaches, will strengthen your certification story, and will build a credible, it will build credibility with customers, partners, and investors. So it's going to be your trust engine or your trust baseline that you can start your growth in the market. For the vulnerability management impact on projects, having continuous scanning will prevent regression, that because you can ensure fixes will stay fixed, and that the configuration drifts wouldn't happen. On the services part, you are going to have discipline patching and hardware. This will reduce incidents caused by known vulnerabilities and will turn every emergency. It's going to be something that is already planned. So we are going to have low stress maintenance. On the product side, you are going to, if you are going to apply vulnerability management, the impact is fewer known issues, incidents, more reliable life cycles that will translate into higher customer confidence and lower support cost. At the company level, you can demonstrate measurable risk reduction, strong compliance, and great negotiation power in deals that require security assurance. So this will having this small improvements every week, knowing what are the improvements, will create a more meaningful, resilient system. So to close this, let's remember just 3 ideas. Vulnerability management provides momentum. Pen testing provides evidence on some niche things that you want to find out. Combining them with a clear pace will convert security from something that you are doing from time to time, like fire drills, into something that is reliable, and it's by design in your system, and this will reduce risk, and you can measure and communicate this that you already have, measure everything, and everything is okay. So then you can build trust through your partners and through the company. Thank you for your attention, and I think we are going now to the next panelist.
Thank you, Răzvan. And now we're going from technical studies to the current challenges of the European Union level with examples, case study, and good practices. Rob, you have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, and you also see me again. Thanks, Anna. So Rob and I have been debating a bit on how to best do this, and the idea was to share a couple of thoughts in any case as a sort of a Q&A between the both of us. Robert being the expert ethical hacker, me being the sort of nitwit trying to be, let's say, interesting every once in a while. But in the basic lines, we've heard already quite a lot of interesting things from Răzvan here as well, putting a little bit context and things into perspective. Also giving some insights on pen testing versus vulnerability management. I think very relevant and interesting perspectives. So Robert, thanks for joining as well. And can you give a little bit background on your story here and your expertise in the domain? We can't hear you, Robert, for some reason. At least I can't.
We cannot hear him also. We can't.
There we go. Now you should be able to hear me just
That's
fine.
correct. Hi, Robert.
Hey, so I'm Robbe. I started hacking when I was 17 years old, when I got totally bitten by the adrenaline rush that you get when you are able to hack into a system, when you are able to see stuff that you're not allowed to see. But already very quickly, I figured out that I want to do this to have a positive impact on society. I want to be a positive force and I don't want to use it for bad reasons. And my life goal is hacking you so you don't get hacked. So previously already perfectly explained what pen testing is. We try to emulate attackers to find vulnerabilities. However, in all of Europe, we see that there are still a lot of hacks happening, and preferably we'd see no hacks at all happening, which is why I think it's very important that together with CYSSDE, we make sure that European instances and definitely critical infrastructure has some funding to start doing penetration testing, to start making sure that they get connected to partners that are good at doing penetration testing, and that way, we can push the level of all of Europe in every country of Europe up a notch to make sure that the attackers that are trying to hack us, that they don't succeed. And it's really a big issue. Just a couple of months ago, France, for example, accused Russia of hacking them, or of a couple of hacks with the sole purpose of disturbing the working of France, with the sole purpose of causing mayhem, causing chaos. These hacks are continuously happening by, in this case, nation-state-backed hackers, but also by ransomware groups and also by hacktivists and by so many different kinds of malicious actors. So we need to make sure that we, get that next level. And I think pen testing is a very important step in that.
Thanks for the background. So in your field of experience, you've done now quite a number of pen tests. You did it basically almost on a daily basis. What are the typical things that you've seen? Can you elaborate a little bit on some of the cases that you've encountered, and some of the good, some of the bad, some of the typical things that in this case many companies should learn from?
Yeah. So the first thing is that many companies focus right now a lot on their external shell. So everything that is exposed towards the internet. And of course, that is very important, because if it's exposed to the internet, then anybody from anywhere in the world can access it. However, what we're seeing right now is that external shell is getting to a fairly mature level, where it's quite difficult to breach that external shell. And that means that threat actors are also moving more inwards. They are focusing on first compromising an account, compromising a employee, and then starting the attack from inwards. And what we see is that when we do these tests, where we start from a compromised employee, then in 90% of the cases, we are able to escalate from just a normal employee account to an administrator of the entire domain. And that's 90% of the cases where within the first hour, we are able to do this. And that means that for almost every company, your threat actor, they only need to compromise a single account, and then they fully compromise the entire organization and can move within. So I think it's also very important that we set a focus on our internal security. What if somebody breaches that first layer of defense? What if some account gets compromised? How will they be able to move throughout our network? I think that's something that it's one of the biggest issues that I see right now, is that there's too much focus on the external part. Of course, you still need the external part. And earlier we already talked about CVEs. And usually when attacks happen fully externally, it is because of some CVE in some software that is used. So that's also still very, very common. I think also what kind of differentiates companies is the way that they react to a penetration test. First of all, you have different reasons why you might want to perform a penetration test. And there's kind of two big groups. One big group is the companies that need to do a penetration test, which can either be one of their clients is requesting them to have done a penetration test before working with them, or there's some legislation that's enforcing them to do a penetration test. And then you have companies that have some internal motivation that they want to be secure, and that's why they are going to do a penetration test. And the difference between them is very, very big. With companies that really just want to be secure, they will work together with the tester, they will make sure that the vulnerabilities get resolved, and they will have a good response to a negative report, because the report is often very, very negative. There are a lot of issues that need to be resolved, but they respond positively. On the other hand, I have literally had companies message me saying, hey, this text in the report, I don't like it. Can you change it to this text? Hey, can you give us a report that looks clean so our clients won't start asking questions? Trying to really remove all the integrity from what a penetration test is, because in a sense, it's an audit that has an audit result. So yeah, the response is very different, and I would advise you all to be in that camp of the companies or the organizations or the institutions that want to be secure and that, you know, take negative results and work on them and improve on them to make sure that next year they maybe don't have that negative result.
Great. I mean, it's quite impressive, some of the things that you're saying within the hour is what's very sticky to me. Can you give a bit of examples in the different sectors, and if you see different levels of maturity differences, and basically also if there are some specific systems which are targeted more? You already mentioned inside, external. So what are some of the examples that you're encountering? Are they typically legacy systems that are being sought after? Are they the fridges, like in my case, or what is that you see?
Yeah, so one of the first things we always try is we try to find legacy systems, outdated systems that haven't been updated where there's public CVEs available. 5 years ago, that was very, very common. You could pretty much in any company walk in, find an outdated system, exploit it, and you'd be into their network. These days, almost across the entire scope of different industries that we attack, that has kind of already improved. That is partly because there's more awareness on it, partly because also a lot of updates nowadays are mandatory and vendors are improving there. So that is slowly already getting better. Not to say that it's a solved problem, but it's slowly getting better for banks, definitely, for critical infrastructure. Well, in OT, it's still a bit of a big issue, but for the normal IT situations, that is getting better. And that's the whole, you know, CVE side of things, public vulnerabilities that attackers can also have access to. What we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of attacks focused on misconfigurations. And these are, you know, you have a product, the product is perfectly secure, but if you tick a single checkbox, you disable some security, and all of a sudden it's fully insecure. And there's no CVE for it, because technically the software isn't vulnerable, but because you click that box, you made it vulnerable right now due to a misconfiguration. And we're seeing that we're really moving towards attackers finding those misconfigurations, and they are incredibly common. And in my opinion, they're most common in the Microsoft Active Directory domain. That is where we see almost all of our. When we hack a company within an hour, it's almost always because of Active Directory. That is the truth. It's something, and Microsoft has said with these vulnerabilities, I call them vulnerabilities, but they call them misconfigurations. You have misconfigured them, even though it's super easy to accidentally make a change that, you know, from the outside doesn't have any security implications, but once you start looking deeper, they have very big security implications. And we're seeing that kind of with every type of organization or company that we reach, we can find those. So of course, I did some hacks in high schools, and there, well, it was super easy. These vulnerabilities, these misconfigurations were everywhere. But I've also done engagements for governments, and the same thing is true there. I've even had this attack work on a bank. So even banks where you think, well, they should have an incredibly high level of security, these attacks still work there. And what I think is most concerning is that in many cases, they are not detected. In many cases, our detection tools, the IDSs, IPSs, XDRs, they are really focused on the exploitation of CVEs where the signature is known and they can detect it. But with these misconfiguration attacks, in many cases they don't detect them at all. So there's a very high gap there.
So that's, I think, already four very important points. So legacy systems, Microsoft Active Directory, the internal things. So I think all of these are definitely very sensible suggestions and things for us to take care of. So typically, how do you go about, Robert, in terms of this type of activity? Because I mean, you have to have a company that's already very knowledgeable, that knows where they want to, where they have some challenges that they discover, that they are also mature enough to take that next step. So how do you go about in deciding where to pen test or what to start doing?
Yeah. So if you've never done a pen test before, I would say that for every organization, it's important to do what I call an organization pen test. And what that pretty much means is that the entire organization is within scope. A pen tester will start from the external side. What are all the IP addresses? What is everything that is exposed about the company to the external? And this hopefully won't find any issues, because if this finds big issues, then the chances are high that an attacker has exploited them already. One time I did a test on a company and they were running an outdated version of GitLab. So it's like a GitHub, but then a self-hosted version. And there was an exploit for it. And I ran the exploit and I was really afraid, because if this exploit would work out of the box, they would have definitely been compromised. Luckily, what the company did is they changed the logo on their front page of their GitLab, and that meant that the exploit didn't work out of the box, but with small modifications, it did work. And luckily, I was the first one to exploit it, and no attacker had done it. But if I told them, look at your logs, and they looked at their logs, and every 5 minutes for the last 3 weeks, this exact exploit had been run against their system. So if you have in your external a vulnerability that is publicly known, it will constantly be exploited. So you need to test your external side of things. What do we also do when we do an organization pen test is we have a quick look on the dark web and with some basic OSINT. And what do? We try to find notices on the dark web that you may have been compromised. So we try to find on the dark web a hacking group stating that you've been hacked, or leaked credentials. So you all maybe know the Have I Been Pwned database. Well, hackers also have such a database, but where they can actually see the real passwords from those breaches. So we'll try that out and see, is there any, are there any passwords that we can already find just on the dark web laying around? That's kind of part one of the organizational check, and that's the external side. Then we move internally and we start testing. What if somebody walks into your company and plugs in a device in the wall and they are connected to your internal network? Or what if they have credentials to access your VPN? So they just have network access on your network. What can they do then? And then we find vulnerabilities such as we can view all the cameras of this organization because they forgot to set their password. With one organization, they forgot to change the password of their badge creation system, which meant that I could create myself a badge that allowed me to just walk in through their front door, walk to the server room, open the server room with my badge, and walk in, just because they forgot to change the password from admin to something else. So that's what's possible there. And then the last step of this initial pen test that I think every company should do is an employee gets compromised. What can happen from that point of view? So I think those 4 steps, so external, a bit of OSINT and dark web checks, internal from the network, and an employee has been compromised, those 4 checks is something that every organization should do to get started.
So that in any case, they are prepared before you enter into the room, in this case.
Yeah.
And so let's say that they've done all of these different steps, and then they're still not very certain about some specific things. What would be your main interest in doing pen tests these days? I mean, what would really excite you to start doing pen tests in a company? Is there a specific sector or specific types of systems? What will really keep you excited?
I love it when a company has made a decision to do a lot of custom stuff and not use a lot of stuff already out there. So whenever they tell me, well, we built this system, from the ground up, we don't have any libraries because we've seen how bad third-party vulnerabilities can get, that really excites me because I know that they are not experts in every little field. Like, they are not authentication experts, they are not OAuth experts, they are not experts in handling all of this. So they will have introduced a lot of vulnerabilities. Whereas if you use third-party components, then the creator of that third-party component is probably an expert in that field. And yes, there are risks with using third-party open source components, of course, but I don't think those risks outweigh trying to build it yourself. So it always excites me if that's the case. And what also excites me is when the company is very cocky about their security, when they have this idea that it's all very secure, and the more they boast about it, the more it kind of ignites me to try and find a very critical vulnerability. And usually it's also the case that when a company is very vocal about being secure, it's usually just a facade, and behind that is actually maybe a lackluster security posture. So I always like to expose that.
Right. Are there differences that you can see between European member states, between regions, between sectors even?
Yes. I think you see a big difference between, in my opinion, companies or organizations, the more west you go of Europe right now. I tend to see that they are more security aware, and the more eastern you go, it starts to become a bit more lackluster. And that's, I think, from the one hand, an issue with funding, because penetration tests are not cheap. That is definitely true, for sure. It's definitely not an issue in expertise, in my opinion, because there is a lot of expertise in pretty much every European country. I have friends, colleagues from anywhere in Europe where I know very famous, very good hackers. However, I think that the awareness, and definitely for more public instances, is lacking the more east you go.
Right. So would you say it's not specifically level of maturity, it's more some of those people are aware, but they are just lacking the means to do the implementation. Is that sort of what you're saying?
I think in many cases, yeah, it's twofold, right?
Yeah.
First, you need that awareness, and only once you have that awareness can budget actually become an issue.
Of course.
It's definitely twofold. Yeah.
Okay. What about sectors? Are there differences in sectors throughout Europe?
Yeah, well, 100%. I think the more publicly funded a sector is, the lesser the security is overall. If you go to really high maturity organizations, those are organizations that also have a lot to lose. Banks are, for example, in my opinion, one of the most secure instances. However, when we do penetration tests for governments, for public institutions, schools, universities, then we see that sometimes the real basic stuff is still missing. And I think that's also because if you're an organization with a lot to lose, if something goes wrong, well, you can lose it all. And for example, if you get attacked by a ransomware, the ransomware group, they will at a minimum ask you 10% of your of the money that you've earned in the last year. So they will specifically go look for financial documents and ask you for 10% of your revenue from the last year, which for a company, you know, that can mean that they go bankrupt in certain cases. For a public institution, usually it's not, they won't lose clients because of it, because their clients are not necessarily paying. Their clients may be students, their clients may be just people in the country. They don't have a choice then to be with that organization or to have their data there. So there is less of a push to secure that, because, well, they won't go bankrupt because of it if they're a public institution, whereas for companies that is actually the case.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we're all citizens, so we
Yep.
as taxpayers will be in the end funding that that attack.
Indeed,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, definitely a good reason not to do it. Okay, let's switch a bit of gears in terms of topic. So the pen test results. The pen test results. We've done a topic on this about a year ago. So you get X number of vulnerabilities. What's the typical size of vulnerabilities that you discover? I mean, depending, of course, on the maturity, on the case, on the situation,
Yeah.
and systems. But so typically, is it
For a
1 to
typical
10?
organization, it will be between 10 and 15 vulnerabilities.
Right.
And that is for a pen test. And
Yeah.
what does that mean? Those are 10 to 15 proven vulnerabilities that have security impact. So that will mean that there is an actual exploit that we show where we prove that the impact is there. And this is a very big difference with vulnerability scanning, what we talked about earlier. Because in vulnerability scanning, you might get thousands of results. But none of them will be verified and checked. So it may be that you're running a software that has a public vulnerability, but the vulnerability is only there if you expose it in this way, or if you have set access. Vulnerability scans, they won't take that into account. With penetration tests, you'll get the actual results that have actual impact, and the impact is proven. And I think that's a very important distinction to make, because many times organizations, they use all of their funding to buy tools. Then those tools give them back results, but then they don't know what to do with them because there's so many results. It's hard to prioritize. Sometimes there's no funding left or money left to actually resolve the things. I think with a pen test, the pros are definitely that you get an actionable list of results, and they are categorized by severity. So usually we'll have 1 or 2 critical vulnerabilities, and these are vulnerabilities that have a high likelihood of being exploited. They're easy to exploit, and they have a very big impact, such as escalating to the administrator of the domain, for example. These are the 2 things that I really need to focus on right now. Whereas with vulnerability scanning, you might get 100 criticals and you don't know where to start. I think with pen tests, that is more clear and much more actionable. A good penetration test report should also have a proof of concept, steps that can be followed. So you yourself should be able to verify, yes, this vulnerability is there. And I think that's very useful and very powerful, and allows you to prioritize these issues much, much better. On the other hand, these tools are still great. You should have these tools. But with every tool you purchase, you need to make sure that you have the manpower to actually train somebody to use that tool and to continuously look at the results and the output, and to make sure that they are actually doing something with it. Because I see many companies asking me, oh, what's the next security tool that I should purchase? And then when I actually do an engagement there, I see that they have all of these tools, but nobody's looking at all of the alerts coming out of them, and I can still do my hacking without being bothered at all, just because they don't have anybody looking at the results. And that's one of the biggest issues I see.
Right. Yeah, so getting security and then basically not doing the monitoring is indeed one of the typical things that we also see, mostly with small and medium-sized companies. Yes, most of them have a firewall, most of them have some form of an EDR, but then it stops there. So nobody watches over it. They just consider, okay, we bought this tool and now it does its own thing. In terms of the types of pen testing that you do where you say, okay, we're using some tools. I'm guessing that also sometimes when you deploy those tools, things can go wrong. So what are the typical things that can go wrong?
Yeah, so there are risks with doing a penetration test because, well, we are trying to abuse a product in some way. We are trying to elicit some behavior that is unintended. That's the whole point of finding a security bug. And sometimes that unintended behavior can cause, for example, downtime. It can cause something to break. As a pen tester, or when you go and purchase a pen test, it's very important to discuss this with that company to make sure that they know where the critical components lie in your network. For example, if you are a hospital, make sure that the penetration testers are not going to test devices that are actually being used for medical purposes at that point. There is a story of a company that hacked a heart monitor of a patient, and it was actually monitoring that patient's heart. If something would have gone wrong at that point, yeah, that could have led to catastrophic consequences. So you need to set your scope right. You need to inform the penetration testing firm of these are our most critical components, and if they go down, then we cannot work, or this has these consequences. And that way, the penetration tester can also work with that. In IT environments, usually the risks are smaller. However, once we go to OT environments, that's when things get really dangerous, because these can be devices that cost millions. They can be devices that are performing physical actions in the physical world, and if something goes wrong with them, somebody gets physically hurt. So here it's very important that you have an organization that is actually specialized in performing that kind of testing. It is very different to test an OT environment versus testing a web application or even an IT environment. So make sure that you discuss this with your pen testing partner, that they are aware of the intricacies of your network, that they are aware of what's performing critical actions. One important thing there is that not everything is critical. Like, of course, your domain controller, well, if it goes down, you can't continue working. That's correct. But you don't need to put this out of scope because, well, there still needs to be something that can be tested. But OT components, for example, definitely discuss where they are, because the tools that we use, I won't use the tools that I use to test an IT environment on OT devices because I know that will cause issues. A very small example is a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a test and they told me that it was just a fully IT environment. So I just did a little scan to see where all the devices were. And all of a sudden, the showers at this client didn't work anymore. Apparently they had showers connected to their internet, and me just sending a simple request to that shower to see what's there broke them, and they couldn't get the showers back up and running. All the employees at the company were very angry because, well, they couldn't shower after work anymore. So these are the small intricacies. In this case, it had very little impact, just some employees that weren't too happy, but imagine that this was some kind of machine that was doing some kind of manufacturing and it just all of a sudden breaks or whatnot. It could have disastrous consequences.
Yeah, just imagine that indeed you launch such an next attack and then basically the showers stop working for the rest of their lives, which is also something that sometimes happens. That would be really disastrous. Right. Are there some tools that you can recommend people to maybe at least start to use internally, also to do the preparations like you were mentioning before?
Yeah, I would recommend for a free tool that anybody can start using to do some basic scanning in their network. OpenVAS, for example, is something that anybody can get started with. It's free. It's, I believe, open source. So definitely start with that. If you want to go to a next level there and go to a paid tool, I can recommend Nessus by Tenable, which is also a great solution.
So if we stop for a second on both tools, so the results that you get from an OpenVAS, I mean, that's the basic requirement for any company. It's getting a list of assets, it's doing the discovery of what's out there. And I think that's already helpful also for you if you step in.
Definitely.
It saves already a lot of cost in if you need to hire an external entity to do that. So at least you are able to map and maybe also ready to identify some basic issues. So in terms of Nessus, how would you see, is Nessus something that would give you more insight in some of the assets being discovered then?
Yeah, so Nessus is a paid solution, and it does the same as what OpenVAS does, but because it's a paid solution, there are more kind of fingerprints in the tool to detect stuff. So it will be better at detecting certain components, be better at detecting vulnerabilities. What's important to know is these both solutions won't try to exploit vulnerabilities. They will just try to detect, oh, I see this device there, it's running that version, and that means it might be vulnerable to this. So it's very useful because for me, every pen test starts with running these tools just so I have a basic idea of what's happening in the network. And then from there, my expertise will say, okay, this is definitely vulnerable. This is a false positive, because a lot of these tools have many false positives. That doesn't mean that it's not good to fix it, but it just means that it's not exploitable at this point. Yeah.
Robert, we immediately dived into the topic, but actually one very important question that we didn't really ask ourselves is, in essence, why do we have to do the pen tests? What is the final use that, for instance, also your clients and your partners are asking you for? I mean, I gave in the introduction some of the cases. Okay, there are security issues with different types of applications and with devices. There's also the legal frameworks. But what would you see today is really the main driver for companies reaching out to you and asking, okay, we need to do a pen test? Any top 5, let's put it this way?
Yeah, so one of them is, and sadly this is the main one, it's legislative frameworks. They need to do a penetration test, and they just want that report. It doesn't matter what's in there, they just need to have a report done. That's a very, very big one. But then you also have the companies that have seen the impact that a ransomware or that an attack can have. And many small companies may think, oh, we are not the targets of these ransomware attacks. Yes, you are. The way that these ransomware groups work is they just attack anyone. They attack the entire internet, anything they can find, they hop on and they exploit it. And that includes small companies, that includes micro companies or schools or whatever. And so you also have a lot of companies that know that is a possibility, that have done a risk assessment and that have said, well, if something like this happens to us, then we'll be out for so many days. We'll have to pay this amount of ransom. So we have to do a pen test to make sure that we are not the weakest target, because in essence, these ransomware companies, they are just hacking the weakest targets. So just investing a little bit in your security can already be enough to make sure that you are not the weakest target in the next year, which can be enough to make sure that you won't get compromised. We also see companies that have been compromised, and these are, I think, the most difficult pen tests to perform, because this company has been hacked. Sometimes they don't know how. They didn't have the required logs to figure out how they got compromised. And then they do a penetration test. In a penetration test, we obviously try to mimic a threat actor, but there is a very big difference between what we do and what a threat actor does. A threat actor, they just need to find a single vulnerability, exploit it, and go from there, try to get money from there. Whereas we as pen testers, we have a time limit. Usually that's 5 days that we get to hack you. And our goal is to find as many vulnerabilities as possible. If we find one vulnerability, well, we move on to the next one because there might be more. A threat actor, of course, they wouldn't do that. They would just exploit the one vulnerability and try to get to get the money that way. But we have to go further. So you have those different kind of companies. Then client requirements, it's also a big one. I also advise anybody, if you're purchasing a third-party tool, ask them, do you have penetration tests that have been performed? And do you have a report that you can showcase us? So a lot of companies come to us, definitely the SaaS platforms, that are popping up, built very quickly. All of a sudden, they have some big prospects. and well, they need to prove that they have been tested. So that's also a very big one.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's round up maybe by linking it back to CYSSDE. With CYSSDE, you've also helped us gratefully by helping us identifying some methodologies that people can use. Those methodologies also for people attending here are freely available, downloadable from the website. So they're not written out of the blue. They're written with some good hands-on expertise using different best practices, and also referring to some of the standard requirements for ethical hacking. So please download those. We also made reference to toolings. I mean, besides the 2 tools that Robin here described, we actually have a list on the CYSSDE website that helps you identify a number of tools. And we're always looking out for new tools as well. So, Robin, in the end, we're also helping out this community and Europe in creating additional expertise in pen testing and doing vulnerability assessments themselves. Why should we do that? I mean, it's not in favor of your business. I mean, why do you think it's useful to grow the let's say the community?
Yeah, right now, if you look at ethical hacking, you have some big types of ethical hacking that everybody needs, where resources are already being shared fairly well, like web applications. There are so many web applications, so resources are being shared very well. But once you go more niche, let's say you have a company in a country in Europe that does all the testing for the infrastructure that allows everybody to have running water in their house. You have one company that does that in one country, another in another country, and usually there's no communication between them at all, which means that expertise stays very, very local. It's difficult to transfer it. And I think the next big move for Europe is to kind of have all of that information accumulated somewhere, making sure that that information is shared between those instances, and that together we can make every country in Europe more secure. And of course, it goes against the business. It would be better to be the ultimate expert in a certain niche, but that then goes against, I think, the life goal that many ethical hackers share, and that's to make sure that we live in a safe digital society. And I think that societal goal far outweighs the business goal in this case, because we are not. If we keep something to ourselves, that can cause real impact in people's lives. If I am an expert in a certain field and I don't share that knowledge with other companies in Europe or with other countries in Europe, then they can get hacked in that way and have severe consequences, mostly and definitely when we're talking about critical infrastructure, not only financial consequences, but it could, lives could depend on it. And it would be incredibly selfish not to share that kind of knowledge. I think also in the ethical hacking world, knowledge sharing is something that is super important, but many people don't understand why. Because all of these CVEs, for example, that are public, anybody can download those exploits and work with them. And that may seem counterintuitive because most of the times those were discovered by ethical hackers. But by constantly sharing everything in the ethical hacking community, we can improve on each other's work. And what will happen is some new research will come out. All of the ethical hackers read that research and they start building on top of it. And then a week after the new research, somebody comes up with a new idea and executes that. And that way we always keep on making it more difficult, keep on improving on research so that the malicious actors, they always are a step behind us. And as long as we can keep that equilibrium where we are ahead of the malicious actors, by constantly sharing information with each other, that's how we can win this battle. And I think right now we're actually in a pretty good state globally. We see that these malicious actors are still resorting to older techniques. Most of the times they're not on the front of research. They're not doing the big research discoveries themselves. And as long as we can keep it that way, we are in good shape. But if that ever changes, if it ever comes to a point where they are doing the new groundbreaking research and we are having to try and figure out what they're doing, then we're going to be in big issues. So let's make sure that doesn't happen by being very open and by sharing as much as possible.
Very great. And I think another important one, definitely also for us as cybersecurity community, if we are able to at least speak on the same level, in the same power value, when you and us know what pen testing is all about, it's making our lives so much easier that we don't have to explain all of these things over and over again. Happy to do so, but it just allows both of us to start at the same level. So Roba, I'll leave it to this right now. Thank you very much for your contributions. I think we'll still have to wait until Gabriel has finished his presentation to answer some of the Q&As. But in the meantime, I'll hand it over back to Anna and Elena, and likely then to Gabriel. Thank you very much, Roba.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing with us all this valuable information. Before I give the floor to our last panelist, I'd like to remind you all to write your question in the chat. Gabriel, you have the floor, please.
So thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. A lot of things have been covered by my colleagues, so I will say a few things about the regulatory landscape. Basically, we all know what pen test is. We all know now the benefits of it. From the regulatory perspective, I would say that at EU level, something has changed. And when I say that, I have in mind all the regulations adopted in recent years, whether new or updated to updates from pre-existing frameworks. And I would mention here like CR, NIS2, DORA for banking, CRAU, CSAU, and there are others, believe me. If I had to sum up the main goals of those regulations in a few words, I would say they're about shifting from a reactive approach to a more proactive approach, taking into consideration what Rob said. We are like in a competition with malicious hackers, malicious actors, try to identify vulnerabilities in our system before they do. So it is not easy to make this shift from the reactive approach to more proactive approach, but the context is pushing us in this direction. Now an incident is no longer just a problem of the entity under attack. It's a problem of the entire community, because when you are attacked, you affect your partners, you affect your your customers, your employees, or even ordinary citizens that rely on your services. And this possibility to be affected is higher and higher. From the legal perspective, when you have to change something, this sometimes involves sanction and bigger sanction, let's say like this. An example is the NIS2 directive, which provides a much clearer and more severe sanction framework. I will mention here that there is a principle of law that says that the value of a law is closely related or linked to its applicability and enforcement power. So obviously, sometimes we need enforcement also. As my colleague said, more and more CV are reported, and I'll mention here that the good part is that we have a bigger community that tries to identify those vulnerabilities, but also reveals that there are still work to do in this matter. At some point, our director stated that it is expected in the coming years that people with limited capabilities, aided aided substantially by AI, will be able to launch high-quality cyber attacks with just a few keystrokes. So it's a challenge for all of us to ensure that the benefits of the technology itself are not, let's say, overshadowed by negative events. In Romania, well, the process of transposition of the NIS2 directive was achieved. We adopted an emergency ordinance of the government. It was not an easy process. And although I thought that the hardest part was over, I was wrong. Implementation is at least as complicated as the transposition process. So the NSC has still work to do. It has to adopt a series of secondary regulations so that the legal provisions have a real positive effect, and at the same time we take into consideration not to put too much pressure on entities concerned. It's kind of difficult. The way regulations intersect and complement each other is high. I would say regarding the penetration test, although they are not directly required, I'm reading a question. In Romania, penetration test, we have authorized persons that can carry out such activities because, yes, responding to your question, there are elements to consider in addition to benefits of this penetration test, including the fact that during those penetration tests, pen person may have access to confidential or sensitive information, which is true. And I will mention here that for a good reason, many security service providers are included in Annex 1 of the NIS2 directive. So they are also essential and important entities. I would say, because the time is pressuring us, I would say as a general conclusion that penetration tests are a good exercise for any organization, providing them with let's say, a realistic picture of their resilience. And also a good way to determine what measures you can implement to improve your resilience. And yes, I encourage you to access any European or national funds to achieve your overall goal of being as well as prepared as possible. So that's it. I've kind of shortened my presentation due to lack of time. If there are any questions, I can answer to them.
Thank you a lot. If there are questions, please put in the chat or raise your hand.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe I can pick up on some of the questions that I see in the chat. So I see here from Dennis Rendler, I hope I pronounced correctly. Are the 200,000 euros available for companies that need to perform pen tests or for companies offering pen test services? Thank you. So Dennis, the answer is it can be for both. Now, having said that, the main focus of the program that we offer is towards companies that are offering pen test services, because we have a slightly more interest focus into small and medium-sized companies. So that's typically companies that are offering cybersecurity pen test services. But what we have seen as well is combinations of companies, both a cybersecurity pen tester together with larger companies that are proposing a joint project. So that can happen as well. And the third element to this, if you are a company that wants to do the pen tests, in this case, for instance, yourself, and you want to train your own people, or you want to advance your own people as a company doing pen tests, then I would would recommend to make sure that they have also the necessary experiences and expertise that can compete to those companies which are basically fully focused on doing pen tests and have likely a little bit more of expertise and background and also experience in this particular domain. So it is a competition. As you've seen, there were 123 applicants in the first open call. We only selected 10, and we selected the 10 out of, let's say, the 123 based upon the different components. And one of those components was effectively the internal competences. So we're very much hoping that you would do this, but I would consider then reaching out to a company that also has this pen testing experience and just teaming up to make sure that you are getting an X amount of pen tests. I'll just read through the rest of the questions. Will the presentations recording be available after the meeting? I will be sending in any case my presentation, and I think Anna, you will be making the recording available, I guess. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, actually it's answered immediately afterwards. And then there's the question on the pen test methods for quantum cybersecurity system. And Madeline will be picking that up. Can a quantum cybersecurity system be audited and certified according to ISO 27000? I'm not sure that has been answered. But it depends, of course, honestly, what you mean with a quantum cybersecurity system. Because as far as I know, but I haven't seen what both China and Russia and others have these days, apart from what is being mentioned just before, that is QRC and PQC. A quantum cybersecurity system I have not yet seen. Can it be audited and certified? Of course it can, under the same measures. But then in this case, it will be an organization that will be audited against ISO 27001, and then specifically the product that might be a quantum system can be qualified, and if it's a quantum cyber system, it probably will have to be qualified against a CRA type of audit. So it has to be CRA compliant, likely.
Just to add to that, right now for 99.9% of organizations, this is the least of your worries, is quantum security. It will become probably a big topic in the future, but right now I would not worry about this and focus on the basic security that has been around for years and that will still be around for many, many years.
Exactly. Fully agree with that. So then finally, I think there's a question on the EDIs, best practice for an EDI on these topics. I can answer that from our side because we're also operating an EDI in Belgian Flanders. So I think there are actually many different things that you can pick up as the EDI organizers, but also as the customers of the EDI. So for those of you not familiar with it, EDIs are European Digital Innovation Hubs. We as EDIs are supposed to be providing services for digital innovation and transformation. We in Belgium and in Flanders, in this case, are providing cybersecurity services as part of those. So we can provide cybersecurity services. We can actually do pen test services as part of the EDI. But I think as well from the EDI perspective, you can assist your customers from the EDI in preparing their risk assessments to be able to identify what specifically needs to be pen tested. You can help them out on deploying some technologies, for instance, vulnerability assessments on a continuous basis. And you can probably also help them in making the right selection towards which pen test organizations to choose from. And since we have 123 that we have been participating in our open calls, and some of the ones that I showed already, I would say take a look into those to basically connect to some of those different partners that can actually offer the pen tests for the companies that you're supporting with the EDI. And I think that's it.
So thank you everyone for joining and contributing to today's seminar. Your questions and comments made this discussion really engaging. I think that a lot of things were discussed, and we keep in touch and carry these ideas forward. See you next time, and thanks a lot to all the panelists, to all the specialists, and for this opportunity to have the discussion under the CYSSDE project. Thanks a lot, Ulrich. Thank you everyone for having this great discussion today. Thanks a lot to our colleagues from DNS, to Rob, and also to our colleagues, Răzvan, for having this meeting today. Thank you all.